Emily Parker screamed before she understood why. The sound cut through the quiet house, sharp and sudden, bouncing off the walls like something broken. She covered her mouth at once, eyes wide, heart racing as if she had just escaped an accident. The room fell silent again, except for the rain tapping against the windows and her own uneven breathing. She felt embarrassed, confused, and strangely alive all at once. She stepped back, pressing her shoulders against the closed front door. The house smelled faintly of coffee and clean laundry, safe and familiar. This was her space, her control. And yet something had slipped past her defenses in a single second. Daniel Harper stood a few feet away, frozen in place. His jacket was still damp from the rain, his dark hair slightly messy, drops of water clinging to his lashes. His hands were half raised, not touching her, as if he were afraid even the air between them might be too much. His face showed no anger, no shock. Only concern. "I'm sorry," Emily said quickly, the words tumbling out. "I didn't mean I don't know why I did that." "It's okay," Daniel said at once. His voice was calm, steady, the kind that didn't demand anything. "I won't come any closer. You're safe. Safe." The word hit her harder than the scream had. She nodded, though her chest still felt tight. She had spent years telling herself she wanted safety more than anything. After the divorce, after the long nights of crying alone, safety had felt like survival. But standing there? Now she realized safety had also meant silence, distance. And a slow forgetting of herself, Daniel shifted slightly, careful not to step forward. "Do you want me to leave?" Emily looked at him, really looked at him, and felt a wave of emotion rush through her. He had always been this way, thoughtful, patient, even back when she had been married to Mark. Daniel had been the one who listened more than he spoke, the one who noticed when she was tired, when she forced a smile, the one who never crossed lines. "No," she said. Her voice was softer now. "Please don't go." They stood there for a moment longer, the space between them filled with things neither had said for years. Then Emily pushed herself off the door and walked toward the living room. Daniel followed, slow and careful, as if matching her pace exactly. She sat on the edge of the couch, folding her hands together to keep them from shaking. Daniel sat in the armchair across from her, leaving enough distance to show he meant what he said. The rain outside grew heavier, drumming against the roof like a heartbeat. Emily tried to focus on normal things. She asked about his trip from Vancouver, about the project he was managing in Portland. Daniel answered simply, but his eyes kept returning to her face as if checking that she was still okay. "You've changed," he said gently. She gave a small laugh. "That obvious, only a little," he said. "You seem stronger, quieter, but stronger." Emily looked down at her hands. Strength was not the word she would have chosen. She felt worn, careful, like someone who had learned how to avoid pain by shrinking away from life. But she didn't argue. Instead, she said, "Divorce does that to you." Daniel nodded. "I know." The word hung there? No. He knew because he had watched it all from the outside. The slow breaking of her marriage. Polite smiles at group dinners. The tension she tried to hide. Mark's growing distance. And then the end, calm and cold, like a door closing without a sound. "I didn't plan to come here tonight," Daniel said after a moment. "But when I got into town, I realized I didn't want to be alone." Emily's throat tightened. "You could have called anyone." "I could have," he agreed. "But I called you." Her heart began to beat faster again, not with fear this time, but with something warmer and more dangerous. She stood and went to the kitchen, needing to move. She poured 2 glasses of water just to give her hands something to do. When she turned back, Daniel was watching her, his expression unreadable, but open. She handed him a glass, their fingers brushing for a second. The contact sent a small shock through her body. She pulled her hand back too quickly, water sloshing slightly over the rim. "Sorry," she said. "It's okay," he repeated, and this time the words felt different. Not like reassurance, but like permission. They talked more easily after that. About work, about old memories that felt distant enough to be safe. Emily found herself laughing, really laughing, for the first time in longer than she could remember. Daniel told a story about getting lost on the drive down, about trusting his GPS too much. She teased him, and he smiled in that quiet way that always made her feel noticed. As the evening moved on, the space between them seemed to shrink without either of them deciding it should. Daniel leaned forward when he spoke. Emily stopped folding, her arms across her chest. At some point she realized she was sitting closer to him than before. Then it happened. Daniel reached out, slowly, as if asking without words, and brushed a drop of water from her sleeve. The touch was light, almost nothing. Emily screamed. The memory of that scream echoed in her head now, filling her with shame and confusion. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to understand why her body had reacted so strongly. "I didn't mean to scare you," Daniel said softly. "You didn't," she said. "You just surprised me." He nodded. "We can forget it. Happened." But Emily shook her head. "No, I don't want to forget." She took a deep breath and stood up. Her legs felt unsteady, but she stayed where she was, facing him. "I think I screamed because I felt something," she said. "And I'm not used to that anymore." Daniel's eyes softened. "Feeling isn't a bad thing, Emily." "I know," she said. "But it's been a long time." He stood too, leaving. Space, but no longer hiding behind distance. "You don't have to rush anything. We can just talk." She nodded, grateful for his patience. Yet even as she agreed, she felt a pull toward him that was hard to ignore. It wasn't just attraction, it was recognition. Like meeting someone who remembered the version of her she had almost forgotten herself. They moved back to the couch. Sitting side by side now, the rain outside had slowed, the sound softer, like a whisper. Emily rested her hands on her knees, aware of Daniel's presence beside her. His warmth seemed to fill the room. "Do you ever think about what your life would look like if things had been different?" She asked all the time, he said. "But I try not to live there." She smiled sadly. "I think I live there too much." Daniel turned to face her. "You don't have to." The words were simple, but they hit deep. Emily felt tears rise to her eyes before she could stop them. She turned away, embarrassed. "Hey," Daniel said, his voice gentle. "It's okay." It's time when he reached out, he didn't touch her. He just let his hand rest close to hers, waiting. Emily looked at his hand. Then, slowly, deliberately, she placed her own hand in his. The feeling was immediate and overwhelming. Warmth spread through her chest, down her arms, like something waking. Up after a long sleep. She didn't scream. She didn't pull away. She held on. They sat like that for a long moment, saying nothing. Emily felt safe and exposed at the same time, her heart open in a way she hadn't allowed in years. She realized then that the scream hadn't been fear of Daniel. It had been fear of herself, of how much she wanted this closeness. "I should tell you something," Daniel said quietly. Her stomach tightened. She had known this moment was coming. Life never gave without taking something in return. "What is it?" she asked. He took a breath, still holding her hand. "I'm not completely free. Not yet. There are things in my life that aren't finished." Emily nodded slowly. She didn't ask for details. She didn't need them to understand the weight of his words. This wasn't simple. Couldn't be. "I don't want to hurt you," Daniel continued. "That's why I'm telling you now." Emily looked at him, really looked at him, and felt the truth in his eyes. He wasn't offering promises. He wasn't asking for anything. He was just being honest. "That matters," she said. "More than you know." They stayed together until late that night, talking and sharing silences, letting the connection exist without pushing it further. When Daniel finally stood to leave, the rain had stopped. The world outside looked clean, washed new dot at the door. They faced each other again, just like when he had arrived. "Thank you for not sending me away," he said. "Thank you for respecting "Me," she replied. As he stepped outside and walked down the path, Emily closed the door slowly and leaned against it once more. Her heart was full and aching at the same time. She knew one thing for sure. The feeling that had made her scream had also made her feel alive. And now that she had felt it, she wasn't sure she could ever let it go. Emily Parker felt the emptiness in the house as soon as Daniel left. The quiet was sharp, almost painful, like a missing piece of her own chest. She had expected sadness, but what surprised her was the longing, the kind that made her stomach twist and her heart ache. She had felt the warmth of his hand, the calm in his voice, the honesty in his eyes. And now the absence of all that left her restless. Every corner of her home reminded her of him, from the couch where they had sat, hands brushing, to the doorway where he had stood before stepping into the night. She tried to focus on ordinary tasks, washing dishes, folding laundry, but her mind kept replaying the evening, the scream she had uttered, the shock, the tenderness afterward. Every detail returned like waves that wouldn't settle. Days passed. Emily kept busy at work, at her small Portland design firm, arranging meetings and sketching layouts, but her thoughts drifted to Daniel constantly. She would glance at her phone, almost expecting it to buzz, almost hoping it would be him. She imagined what he was doing in Vancouver, whether he was thinking of her as much as she was of him. Sleep was restless. She tossed and turned at night, the memory of his touch and voice stirring feelings she had buried for too long. It wasn't just attraction. She froze, heart racing. It was a message from him. "I'm ready." "You still are?" Emily stared at the screen, the words blurring as tears filled her eyes. She reread them over and over, letting their meaning sink in. Daniel was willing to take the risk, willing to try something real, despite everything. The hesitation, the honesty, the carefulness, all of it made her chest ache and flutter at the same time. She typed back quickly, "I'm ready." That weekend, Daniel arrived in Portland again, this time with no uncertainty in his eyes. Emily met him at the airport, and when she saw him walking toward her, she felt her heart leap. He was smiling, genuine and warm, and she realized she had missed him more than she had admitted even to herself. As they drove back to her house, the conversation was easy, light, but underneath there was tension, anticipation, and unspoken emotion. The small gestures, the way his hand brushed hers on the seat, the soft laugh he gave when she teased him made her chest tighten with both longing and hope. At home, the evening stretched comfortably around them. They talked about trivial things at first, the weather, small updates in their lives, work frustrations. Then, gradually, the conversation shifted. Daniel shared stories about his childhood in Vancouver. Tales of summers spent by the water, memories of mistakes, and lessons learned. Emily responded with her own stories, some light and humorous, others tinged with vulnerability. She felt exposed in a way that was thrilling rather than terrifying. For the first time in years, she realized she could let herself be fully seen. Without fear of judgment, they moved closer naturally, sitting on the couch, the warmth of each other's presence enough to fill the room. Every small touch, on accidental brush of fingers, a shared look. A laugh that lingered too long added to the slow-building tension between them. Emily felt her chest tighten and loosen in waves, her mind racing and slowing all at once. She realized she hadn't felt this alive, this understood in years. Her body, mind, and heart seemed to be waking from a long night's self-imposed hibernation. One night, the city lights reflected off the windows and the soft hum of cars passed by outside. Daniel reached for her hand again. This time, she didn't flinch. She didn't scream. She held it, letting warmth and reassurance flow between them. Her breath caught. Her chest swelled with feelings she had thought lost. The touch was gentle, deliberate, a promise of something. Deeper than desire, it was care, attention, and honesty combined. She realized that her fear had been about surrendering to feeling, not about Daniel himself. "You make it hard to be careful," she whispered. He laughed softly, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. "I don't want you to be careful. With me." Emily felt herself leaning closer, drawn in by both the magnetic pull of him and the safety he had always given her. The years of heartbreak and caution began to dissolve. In their shared presence, nothing else mattered. Time seemed suspended, and she realized that the feelings that had scared her before were exactly what she had needed all along. Over the next few days, it slipped into a fragile but thrilling rhythm. Mornings began with coffee and quiet conversation. Afternoons were spent wandering the city, sharing small discoveries, and evenings stretched into long talks on the couch. Sometimes silent, sometimes filled with laughter, always with hands brushing, shoulders touching, and hearts slowly opening. Emily felt an awakening she hadn't anticipated. Every glance from Daniel, every small reassurance, every careful step he took toward her trust, built something stronger than attraction. It built connection, depth, and belonging. Despite the happiness, there was still tension, a quiet awareness that Daniel's life in Canada was not yet settled. Emily sometimes caught herself pulling back in brief moments, questioning whether this closeness could survive the practical realities awaiting them. But Daniel's presence and patience were constant, anchoring her when uncertainty threatened to push her away. One night, as the city lights blurred outside her window, Daniel reached for her again, this time holding her hand firmly. Emily met. His gaze seeing not only desire but commitment, honesty, and longing mirrored there. She leaned into him, feeling the steady warmth of his hand, and let herself finally embrace the emotion she had fought for so long. The fear she had felt, that first night, the scream, the sudden jolt of alarm, was now replaced by trust and yearning. She realized that some feelings, once tasted, became impossible to forget, as days turned into nights and nights into shared routines. Emily discovered a new sense of courage within herself. She dared to hope again. She allowed herself to be vulnerable. Again, she let herself feel completely and without reservation the slow burn of desire, the thrill of intimacy, and the quiet comfort of being understood. She had screamed at first because the feeling had been shocking and intense. But now, immersed in it, she couldn't get enough when Daniel finally stood at the door to leave. Preparing to return to Vancouver, Emily felt the old panic rising again. She didn't want to let go. Not now, not ever. He paused, looking at her with that steady, knowing gaze. "I don't regret any of this," Emily said, her voice trembling but firm. "Even if it hurts later, I don't regret feeling it." Daniel reached out, brushing her cheek gently. "Neither. Do I? You've reminded me who I am, who I can be when I'm not afraid." When the door closed behind him, Emily felt tears streaming down her face. But they were not just tears of sadness. They were of gratitude, of hope, and of triumph over the years she had spent feeling hollow. She knew that the feeling that once terrified her, the intensity, the closeness, the vulnerability, had become a need she couldn't deny. Weeks later, a message appeared on her phone. Simple words, but powerful. "I'm ready, if you still are." Emily smiled through the tears, her heart pounding, knowing that she would say yes. That the feeling that had once made her scream had now become the very thing she could not live without. She had chosen love, chosen desire, chosen connection, and chosen life. In the days that followed, Emily and Daniel began writing a new chapter together, one filled with laughter, tenderness, patience, and mutual understanding. Emily discovered that love could be both gentle and intense, that it could awaken parts of herself she thought were gone. She realized that the scream, the shock, the moment of fear had been necessary, a doorway to a life she had almost denied herself. Each touch, its conversation, each quiet evening together reminded her that feeling deeply, risking heartbreak and surrendering to love, was worth it. The first scream had been fear, but now the echo of it had transformed into exhilaration. anticipation, and the joy of being fully alive. She knew the road ahead would have challenges, distance, and uncertainty, but for the first time in years, Emily felt certain of one thing: some feelings, once discovered, could not be ignored, and this was the feeling she couldn't get enough of.